In this particular video, we are going to be covering the topic of domain and range, and we'll look at some examples. So pages 4 and 5, we're going to go over in this video. So open your packet, turn to page 4 and 5, and we're going to discuss and go through this as notes. So this particular paper is notes. And we're going to go over, so the topic is domain and range. And Math 1. Okay, so let's discuss domain. The domain is really just all the x values. Right here it says all of the x values that are represented in the particular, whether it's a graph or whether it's an equation or whether it's just a set of values. We're just going to take for the graph. It says right here we're going to find domain and range of continuous graphs. Continuous graphs are anything that has straight lines, or maybe they're curved lines even, but anything that's graphed on a coordinate plane. Let's scan it with our pencil from left to right and identify the x values in which you are touching the graph. Okay, so in this case right here, I'm thinking about starting from left to right. Here's left and here's right on this graph, and I'm going to go left to right. And my domain, I have to talk about all of the x values that could be represented. Well, there's arrows on the end, right? So because there's arrows on the end, it actually goes from infinity, negative infinity on this end, all the way over to infinity on this end. So it's really all of the x values. And so how do we write that? This example looks like it's already done for you. So all real numbers. And there's this fancy notation with double bars on an R, and that notation is just a way that we represent in math. You'll see it in math textbooks, but it's just all real numbers. And you might be asking yourself, wait, there's real numbers and not real numbers? But yeah, later on you'll talk more about what are called imaginary numbers in another math class. Instead of writing just all numbers, we say all real numbers. So just a tiny little detail. All right. And range. So we're sort of going to go from, on the range, we're going to scan our pencil from top to bottom and identify all of the y values in which you are touching the graph. Okay. So if you're scanning from top to bottom and you're going to go down with your pencil, you hold it sideways like this, and then you scan down. Well, it kind of has an ending point. Do you see where it stops on this particular graph? And it doesn't go any further. So this is actually a y value of -2 at that position right there. So, and then in the top part of it, it looks like it goes off into the y direction forever and ever and ever in that direction on both of these, right? And it increases forever. But so there's kind of a restriction on this. It's all y values that are larger than -2. So we say y values that are greater than or equal to -2 for this particular restriction, or the values that are represented. Okay, number 2 is done. But again, you take and kind of scan from here over to here, because those are all of our x values from right to, or left to right. And then you also scan kind of this bottom part right here to here. And you scan, how do we represent the range of values, whether we're talking about range in the y direction, so this is y's, and these are x's for the domain. And so the answer on this one is -3. And then what we want to do is we want to represent a range of values for each of these. So we use this fancy notation where we say we're greater than or equal to -3. There's -3 right there, and +3 over here. So then it's less than or equal to -3 right there. Okay, again, we have some restrictions on this too. What's the maximum and minimum values? Okay, so this one is also going to be kind of centered at 0, 0, right? So it's actually going to span from -3 all the way on my y values. And my 2 restrictions are to go from -3 to +3. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to do number 3 and say number 5, but we won't do all of the graphs necessarily. I'll do the odds. All right, so as we go through the rest of these, I'll go quicker and we'll scan left to right. I'll do all the odds. You do the evens and check your answers with our answer key that's uploaded into our system. Okay, so on number 3, you notice that it's a linear function. This one right here has a fancy name. It's a straight line. So we actually call this a linear function, just because it's a straight line. Okay, so it actually goes off into infinity in this direction, forever and ever and ever, and this direction. So all x values, right, are represented. So we say all real numbers. Or another way to say that is that fancy R, right? That looks like that. Okay, so again, you could just use the R if you wanted to. All real numbers, right? Like that for the Y values as well. Here's Y's, here's X's. So it actually spans all of the, this will go this way forever and ever and ever in the Y values as well. It might take a while, but if you were to zoom out on this graph, you could actually see that it goes forever and ever and ever. So really it would span all of the Y values also, because there's arrows on both ends. Okay, number 5 is a little bit different. There's kind of a top point and a bottom point. So what X values will be represented, if I scan left to right, I'm going to kind of go from that point to that one. And so I sort of hold my pencil like this, and I scan left to right for all my X values. Okay, so the X values that are represented here will be from -1, and it's going to be greater than or equal to -1, and less than or equal to 5. So I go over here and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to that point right there. Okay, again, I also like to scan from top to bottom, sort of like that, or from bottom to top if you want to go that way. And it would be -3, so greater than or equal to. So above this point is greater than -3, but also less than or equal to +3, because it does include those ones, because there is a point value at 3 and a point value at -3. So our answer would look like that. So we're just selecting all of the X values for domain and all of the Y values for the range that could work. Oh wait, made a typo. Take a look right here. We want to definitely have a Y in that location right there. So my bad. Let's write that down. Great. Hold on. Greater than or equal to 3. And we want to put a Y right there instead of an X. Okay, check the answer key for number 4 and number 6. Okay, number 7 and 9, go to the next page. And you can kind of see, again, we're going to scan from left to right. And you'll see arrows on the end of these, right? So there's an arrow on the end of each of these sides. So the domain is all real numbers, all real numbers. And the range actually is from this top point to the bottom points, so it's sort of in between these two spots, right? Like this. All right, so what's this Y value right there versus this Y value right there? Okay, so my Y values will span from greater than or equal to the negative value down here, -3, and it will span from +2, it looks like. So less than or equal to +2. So it gives me a sort of a span or a range of values for the Y. Remember, again, range is Y, domain is X. Okay, let's look at 9. 9 is a line. This is sort of interesting, though. And here is my graph of that line. But notice the two arrows on the end, right? So from top to bottom, it's all real numbers for my range on my Y. So all the Y values that could work, they keep going, right? This keeps going in this direction. So my Y values are all real numbers. Here, let me erase that. We're not going to put a Y down there. But what we are going to write is all real numbers. And I could use my fancy symbol if I wanted to. All real numbers, right, like that. Here's my fancy symbol. Okay, so again, we have on this one, though, what X values are represented? Well, we don't have any X values here or here. We only simply have X values that are on top of this line. So what are all the X values that are represented on this line? Any particular X value that will be on top of that line is actually represented as X equals one single number, and it's 2. That's the only X value that's actually represented. There are no other X values that are present there. So if I could go back and kind of erase this, it's not working. There we go. Okay. Anyway, next, let's go do number 11. All right, so on number 11, it's sort of weird. You have this point that is included right here. You see that point is actually included, but this one over here is not included. All right, and so we span from left to right. So from left to right, and we're going to go from this one. Hold on. So from right here all the way over, we're going to have sort of a span or a gap on our x values. So the x values will actually be greater than or equal to, because it does include that one, right? And so it'll be greater than or equal to, and my x value that is right there is actually at -2. Okay, but here's the weird part, is that this one's not included here. Okay, so we count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to that one. And so it should be less than 5, but not equal to, because this one's not solid and filled in. There are circumstances where a graph like this could show up. This is not a normal situation, but it definitely could show up something like this, a section of graph. All right, what about our range of values? Remember, range of value are all of our y values. So from there down, that looks like the lowest point right there. So it kind of tracks over to there. All right, so our span on our y values, not including that y value over here, so it's going to be larger than -2, because here's -2 right there. And so you can kind of track over and see that from where's my gap? Here's the amount of values that are actually represented by this graph. All right, so -2 would be represented, and up to +1. So it'd be less than or equal to +1. And it would have to be equal to, because there are point values that are exactly at +1. All right, so some of these are a little bit goofy here and there, but not too bad. 13, last one. You would have x is less than 2, but let's try to see why. Well, you would have a starting point right there at 0. That's for our y values. So for our x values, we would just simply have starting right here at +2, and it would be less. And it would be all of the x values that are less than that. But this one's not included. So you see right on top of there that it's actually not included. And so we would just say less than 2, but not equal to. All right, and on our range of values, it would be y is less than 0, because 0 is represented right here, and that's that particular value. But it would be all y values that are less than that would be included. Because of this arrow on the end, it goes forever and ever and ever. Okay, so with that said, I want you to do all the evens and then check your answers on our program and make sure that that works for you. Then our homework assignment is very, very similar to this. And our homework assignment would be pages 8 and 9. Look to the next video so that we can actually do pages 6 and 7. We'll do together a little bit. Some more notes on whether something is a function or not.